welcome the slide-wise in the order of architect Jacqueline Yeo.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm Jacqueline. Nice to meet you all today. I was from NUS architecture. Then I went to study in London. I was practicing in London for about two or 3 years, and I came back to Singapore. I started my practice. Oh, okay. Yes. Oh, I do it myself. Okay, good. Okay. I started my practice some time ago now, 2008, with my partner. Today's like a short introduction of what I feel architecture has meant to me and why I decided to be an architect. So, what's the first ever object of design or building of space that fascinated you? I think these are some of the common prompts that you'll see for everyone. So I think we were all given the same prompts. This is me, 10 years old. Before Disneyland was all over the world, it was only in America. And at 10, I was given the opportunity to go there. And I think it really fascinated me because it was a very all-consuming space that was just meant to be the happiest place on earth, right? So when I came back, I wanted to share the same experience with my family, with my cousins and my siblings. And we basically tried to recreate Disneyland in our house. So then it struck me that actually a space can give a lot of joy to people if it's properly designed, it's properly made into the sort of curated space that you want. And that gave me the fascination to want to be an architect, to be the person that created that space. And then the most recent object of design that you have fallen in love with, so this, if you all knit, will know that it's a knitting pattern. And it's fascinating because it's actually a piece of notation, like what Federico was showing about the space program. But this is actually a knitting pattern for a cardigan. And it's a 2-dimensional knitting pattern, but it becomes like a 3-dimensional object at the end of the day. So I'm always very fascinated with how to decode a knitting pattern and, of course, make that particular product or garment. And because I'm an architect, I'm also very extra. So I also am fascinated with pottery. That's a lifelong, again, a thing that I've always wanted to do. And pottery is something that's very immediate. It's very tactile. It's very intuitive. It's something that gives me like almost instant gratification. So it's very different from a building. So it's something that I do parallel to being an architect. So why did I be an architect and why is it important to me? So it's important to me because it is about, at the end of the day, a translation of creating everyday spaces. So if you look at the top there, that's like a ubiquitous covered walkway that you see everywhere in Singapore. And then for a project in the school, I don't know anyone of you have gone to National Junior College as your education. So this is something that we did to link the college and the boarding house. So it's kind of like an open classroom, but we basically used very, very cheap materials, but with a twist to the way it's being constructed. So if you see it, it actually just flares out from a very tent-like structure at the far end there to a very pavilion structure on this side here. And just to do that creates a totally different experience to if you walk a regular covered walkway. It also has a connection to craft and building. This is, again, going back to sustainable building and going back into how do you build something that contains all these aspects of sustainability. So in this project in Malaysia, we were given the opportunity to do something called prefabrication, which is actually creating all these things in the factory before you bring it to site so that everything on site can be done really quickly. So this building, because of the prefabrication, was watertight or weathertight in 3 months from carting it to site, which is quite incredible for a 11,000 square meter building. And it's also a fascination with crafting because it really, even at the most high tech of buildings, boils down to the actual crafting of the individual components that is done by, I mean, eventually it's done by a machine, but it's still kind of like designed and thought about by people that are very involved in the whole process. It is, again, also being an architect, allows you to work with a lot of constraints. So it's not like an artist, which maybe they do have constraints as well, but being an architect has very real constraints of cost and of time. So in this project, our client had very little money. So instead of cutting away all the things that we wanted to have, we thought, how about we just streamline everything that they wanted in this 2-meter width of construction. So essentially, we just built 2-meter width boxes that contain everything that they needed in that apartment. And then we left the rest of the apartment bare because we thought that, I mean, it's still very well lived in. It was done 10 years ago. And then also because we wanted to create spaces that will take on a life of their own at the end of the day. This is a house that we just completed, and that is a school that we just completed. And actually, we can't really predict how people will use the space, but we can imagine how it will be filled with life. So if you like that, you like creating spaces that people live their own improved version of their lives, hopefully, being an architect would be good for you. And also, so it's the same school, is possibility of making big things out of many, many months of small things. So I think being an architect is also a lot about trying to look at the minutiae of everyday living and everyday life, but together with a lot of people in the team, bringing it together and making it into an eventual large building that everyone would be able to enjoy. And finally, I think it's also to create very unexpected moments of delight when how the sun hits the building, how people use the space, how the building material weathers through many times of the day. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jacqueline. All right. Next up, we will have architect Adrian Lai.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi. Oh, thanks. Hi, I'm Adrian. I was in NUS very long ago, so I'm your senior. And then I went off to London to study and work. So I'll show you some of the things I did. First ever object of design that fascinated me is actually the IKEA catalog. So most of you don't even, have you touched the book before? Yeah. So my grandfather and my granduncle are both architects. So I saw how they live their life. They are kind of very interesting people. But this really fascinated me when IKEA first came to Singapore. You can see now they have a museum of all their catalogs. But what really fascinated me was their kitchens, their design, how they present an alternative lifestyle to me. And I don't know how Ang Mohs live, but then as a 16-year-old, it's okay, right? We're friends. Right? So actually, my dad was in SIA, so we always traveled. We lived in France, in Germany, in Seattle for months growing up. So, but still, it was an opening to another lifestyle to me. And what was really interesting was, in a small space like that, what really fascinated me was how they presented 6.5 square meters. They're trying to convince us that every little space counts. You can design a whole lifestyle in small spaces. And here, just in this picture, I was just using it to illustrate. 6.5 square meters, you have a kitchen that has a window, that has a laptop where you can do your work, and then you have this kind of equipment that kind of tells you, and then I see men in the kitchen working, which is, for me, it was novel. So some of the things might sound cancelable to you all, but that's my world, okay? So this was really exciting. He was making stuff, he was using equipment that I don't even see in my own kitchen when I was growing up. So this book was a real kind of, before the internet, this was amazing to me. And of course, it was really just how you use the space, and it's 3D. It's like a plan in 3D, one-point perspective, and they can tell you can plan from bottom all the way up. So to me, that was really fascinating. And then more recently, that was a very long time ago, right? And Tory Gates in this place, but it's actually this is really famous. This is less famous. But as we are visiting, I saw this, the two dogs that guard the gate before you enter the gate. And I was just staring, and then I lost my family because they walk off because I always take too long looking at these kind of things. But look, this is the doggy's legs, and this is the timber veins, and it kind of mimics the kind of muscle that they have. Look at that, the little knuckle, and how they have the knuckle here, and every vein is like as if it's a fossilized dog, right? So the way you can make something like that and find the pieces of wood and put it together, and I was just staring at it for too long, right? So this was really something I fell in love with. It kind of tells us about design and making, and really making it so that people can just look at a dog and they're like, oh, okay, that's symbolic. But you can also have craft people like us looking at it and saying, wow, they really meld design, fabrication, and into almost an art form, right? Okay, being an architect, sorry, I didn't use this. Can you hear me? Being an architect is important to me because I like to think that we sometimes make impact on everyday life. When I was working in London, before I came back, I was in London for 10 years, a bit of studying and a bit of working. I worked for Wilkinson Air, where we designed schools for the future, and they were there looking at, this was in like 2004, and they're looking at things like school bullying and etc. And we wanted to design an exemplar school so that all over UK they can roll out these schools that are both sustainable but also looks at the students' quality of life, their learning. This was very impactful for me because this is the first time young architect, 26 years old, went there, and at the groundbreaking ceremony, people were crying. Why? Because they have been lobbying for 10 years to have a school that has a childcare, kindergarten, primary school, secondary school, vocational institute, all on one campus. Why? We were in a very poor part of England, Bristol, and when the tobacco factories moved out of Bristol, they had no more money. So the families were very poor, which means they had a lot of social problems, which means that they had a lot of children who were like 12, 13 years old and they become mothers already. So because of that, they had to look after their kid and they cannot study. So then the cycle continues because they can't study, they can't get better jobs, etc. So a lot of the parents were actually grandparents, like 42 years old were grandparents, right? And they were lobbying that the government builds this kind of school so that the kid, the 12-year-old, can put the kid down at childcare, learn how to look after their kid, then go and attend their own class while someone look after, so that it all is in one place. So when they finally got exemplar and then they got the government to agree, when we were building it and we designed it for them, they were like, it's going to change their life. So this was nice. And then national impact, Wilkinson Air, together with Grant Associates and CPG, we won the competition to design Gardens by the Bay. I was working in London then. I told them, my company, we won't win one. It's a competition, right? And then when we won it, they say, you, for your sins, you go back and deliver it. So I came back, and I worked on it for 1.5 years there, and then I came back and worked on it for another 4 years. So after 6 years doing one project, I had enough of it. Like 2011, like, thank you, just take it back, government. But really, it was really nice. We were worrying, like Jack was saying, we were worrying about little things like how to design this bench and how to design the plants. So it's really little things with a lot of people in the right spirit making things happen. I hope some of you have visited it. At the same time, before I did that, when I was Gardens by the Bay, I was working on a 105-story tower in Guangzhou. Actually, we can go higher, but it got politics, right? So if you're in Guangzhou, you're not Beijing. You cannot have the tallest tower in China. So they had this kind of conversations, and we're like, okay, a bit higher, a bit lower. And then we got it to 104, but you know, in Chinese, cannot be 4, right? So 105. Okay. So this is like 70 over floors of towers, and then on the top, we had to design this crystalline atrium, and 4 seasons were going to take it. So we were very excitedly working on it. This is how the lobby, when you come out on the 77th floor, and you get this view. And then when I came back to Singapore, I started my own firm. We also start to do impactful districts. This is Kongguan Biscuit Factory. This is Kongguan Biscuit Factory. And the founder of Kongguan Biscuit actually lived there with all the children, all the people who are running the company now. And we designed this extension for them. We designed architecture, landscape, interior design, and we really wanted to bring back the kind of significance it had. You can imagine that building was since 1952, pre-independence. At that time, it was the tallest building there. So we wanted to bring back a kind of significance to this landmark area by having this architecture that speaks to the old, but is new. And then based on that, we also did the recent Clarke Quay rejuvenation. We did the next round together with Formworks. We partnered up, we won the project, and you'll see that we've upgraded the cooling systems, we've improved our urban design. I will be quick, Alicia. We did some of the warehouse and ID, and also the historical facts that we uncovered, we put it back there for everyone to discover. So they're all over. You can go and discover like Easter eggs yourself. And then we're also quite interested as a firm to build new knowledge. So I also run a practice and I also teach. So I'm interested to teach students fundamentals, which means old information. But I also like to think that I will continue building new knowledge. So part of that means I curated Singapore's exhibition 2 years ago in Venice. This is Venice. Biennale is happening now, but this is the previous one. We designed this thing that questions Singapore's obsession with measurable outcomes, because beauty cannot be measured, connection between people cannot be measured, emotional ties and attachment to our historical districts cannot be measured, but we really, really care about these things. So how do we work with the government who really, really care about measurable outcomes? So we did an exhibition based on that. It was really nice. We could feature 20 over firms' works and then also engage the visitors there on how do you measure the unmeasurables. It was really fun. That is like, we did some AI art with the artists, and then they're supposed to answer questions. So these are all everybody's different questions, answers to those questions. And then we try and find Actually, we just try and find consensus to see whether there's a general opinion on things. That's one of the brilliant artists. She was your senior here, my student, and now she is also teaching in NUS. She also runs with Christo some of these masterclass on Saturdays. So sign up. She's brilliant. She's an artist now. And building new knowledge also means that when I build my houses for my clients, I'm actually having secret experiments. But they're not paying for my hobbies. It actually helps to improve their environment. So for example, these series of houses are the tropical chimney houses, where we are trying to bring breezes into the house through the stack effect. So we have, we design nice, we think it's nice interiors, but actually they allow wind through, and the way we design it in section, that means when you stack it, how you draw hot air out so that wind will keep coming in. And we don't just say only we actually want to measure. We work with Atelier 10 and some other environment engineers. After we finish designing the houses, we'll go back and we'll test all the systems, and then we prove to ourselves what works, what doesn't, and then we try and improve on the next house. That's it.
Thank you.
Oh, I left the clicker there.
Okay, can. Okay. Next up will be architect Ms. Hui Lian. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Mine will be very short because I was given a brief to just contribute a few slides, not like what Adrian has done. Okay, so I graduated in 2010. Farm was my first office, which I worked for about 10 years. I still work with them on some projects, but I've since established my own firm for about 3 years now. Okay, so the first object of design building, what I did was this space, Sendang Sono at Jogja. So what happened was as an architecture student, I think what it trains me was to be aware of spaces. And to be honest, prior to that, I didn't have like a building that I admire or a space that I love. So it was in year 2 when we were given the opportunity to go to help out in Jogja to repaint one of the slum areas. I was brought to this place called Sendang Sono. So to me, it was very fascinating because it's a space of pilgrimage. If you guys get a chance to go, you should, because the journey there through the forest, it was quite impactful because it's like a procession. You go in and then suddenly you realize you are in a place of worship, and it's not like a church or a big mega building. Instead, it's like this series of little structures within the landscape that really fascinated me. So this was my first encounter in year 2 as a student of a space. Most recent object, it's not an object, it's a place actually. So increasingly, after practicing for about 10 years, to me, what is something that I'm trying to pursue is of the humble spaces, well-designed spaces. So this is a 120-year-old Japanese house in Japan. It was beautifully restored, and to me, it is still something that I look to as a reference, the details, and to me also the proportion of spaces, which I'm going back to understand, even though I've been practicing for so long. So something as simple as humble as a 100-year-old house is something that to me is what I'm kind of pursuing now, actually. So being an architect, I'm just going to talk about one project. Yeah. So to me, this is the first project that I did when I first started my practice. So it was like my playground. What I love to do as an architect is to really be on site to experiment with new ways of dealing material. So if you see on the far right, it's actually a glass block wall. So it's something that you will probably realize and notice around in Singapore, a building material that is not say new, but to me, I wanted to experiment with how it can be also quite a structural element that my contractor also didn't know how to do it. So it was fun for me, especially to explore new material, to test out different ways of crafting spaces. So I love being on site. Yeah, so that's one of the perks I feel as an architect. And to me, when I deal with spaces, I use model as well. So for students, this is something that is very important, even as we practice, to test out scale, to test out geometry, to test out proportion of spaces. And this is midway through the building when the scaffold is removed. So to me, actually, I enjoy spaces most when it's at this raw state. But unfortunately, you got to finish it with some material. So what to me during the process was enjoyable was also to engage with contractors. So unlike the some practice out there where architect is the lead, but of course we're still the lead, but to me, I find joy in discussing problem solving with contractors on site, with consultants. So, and also the image is when I invited the stakeholders of the building, which is the family. So you get to see kids as young as like 5 going to site so that they can kind of like have a feel of what they're going to get eventually. Yeah. So this is how the house is like completed. It still kind of stayed true to my vision of what the house could be. And of course, there are adjustments that were made on site, things that I tested. But I think eventually what was quite enjoyable to me was to realize the space in its entirety, what I envisioned it to be. So this is the final outcome. What was interesting for me as well, if you notice, the gate is very low. It was something that when I was discussing my client, they were like, can we have no gate? Then they were like, they're not too comfortable with the idea of no gate. So what I did was, okay, can we have a less than a meter high gate? Initially, they were quite apprehensive, but they were still quite game to let me try it. So we still pushed for it. And I think at the end of the day, what was quite rewarding was now when they shared with me their experience, they said, when neighbors go by, this is quite a nice place for them to actually engage with the neighborhood. So something that was a nice outcome. Yep, and this is how the space, you remember in its raw state, and now it's cladded with the terracotta, and how we started to bring in the glass blocks into the facade. Yep, that's about it.
Thank you. Let me welcome the next presenter, Prof. Florian. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Florian. I'm teaching here almost 5 years. I'm associate professor in practice. I'm German. I've been studying in the Netherlands, did my master degree there, and also my PhD. And I have a company called Shau, which stands for Surya Vinata, Heinzelmann Architecture and Urbanism. So I partnered up with my wife. So we, met at the Berlage Institute where we did the master. So we always say it's like the most expensive dating service ever, So don't underestimate, the social contacts and people you meet here. So maybe you meet the partner for life and start a company, which is always nice. So we started Shau in the Netherlands, and then we moved to Indonesia. So I've been in Indonesia for 6 years, and 5 years ago came to Singapore. So what's the first ever object of design that fascinates you? So now it's a piece of furniture, but a movable one. Why do I like this? Why do I remember this? So it has this, I remember as a child, like maybe 4 or 5 years old, it has this haptic quality. It has this smooth surface, and this is sort of plywood pressed in form and then coated and covered, and it always felt good to use your hands in these curves. At the same time, you can fold it, unfold it, and my mom almost warned me, when I tried to play around with it and fold it, don't squeeze your fingers and be careful, because if it's folded, it's not so stable. You can move it around and it falls on top of you. So we had this thing for quite a while, and there's even a moment where almost hurt myself severely. That was when I was a baby, when I just started walking. So my mom had this thing on the balcony. Of course, I don't remember, but I remember a couple of photos where I was sitting on this. So I had this on the balcony, and I had very sticky fingers. I don't know, like small kids have sticky fingers. So I was like patching on top of it and climbed up, and I was sitting next to the balcony balustrade and almost fell over. So it's a very important design piece for me, in a way, it seems. Yeah, but I'm fascinated by these mechanisms and the geometry. And if you look like here, you fold this up here, it follows nicely. This curves, it folds in, and it's a very practical object. So, what's the most recent object of design? It's my bicycle. It's a very special bicycle. It's a gravel cycle. Which looks a little bit like a road cycle, but you can put mountain bike tires inside. It's from an Icelandic company. And what is interesting is, again, about mechanisms. Usually if you know mountain biking, you have these suspension forks in front and they need maintenance. This has a glass fiber spring leaf. So you basically take out the chatter of the uneven road. But everything here is solved within the material level. So it's a mixture of material properties and geometric properties. And this is something you will learn in architecture as well when you're studying here, that everything is a combination of works in terms of performance as a combination of these two elements, material and form. So you can, you will see something like catenary curves, like the Sagrada Familia. You have like these hanging chains, right? And if you sort of would freeze them, lock them in shape and put them around, you have the ideal arch, right? So this is a combination of this geometry and the material properties in the Sagrada Familia with the stone. In a similar way, this bike is also high performance, with carbon. So you see how this is shaped. So this is shaped for a certain purpose, and I find this quite fascinating. And of course, it gives me tremendous freedom to travel, travel without a car, going places. Here I was in Indonesia, in Bandung. Here, this is a site visit. I went with my bike to visit the project, which I will show you in a second. And also, it has to do also with the environment. When you think about it, I, as a person, if you look at it, how much energy I need, I can get with my bicycle 100 kilometers with a quarter liter of gasoline, the equivalent, right? And how much do you get with a car if you ride with a car with a quarter liter of gasoline? You probably get to Woodlands and that's it. So being an architect is important to me because of the benefits to society. Where are my images? Okay. Okay. Doesn't matter. Of the power of transformation. So this is a existing building in Jakarta. It's an office building next to a project we are having. And they need an office for this cultural center. And this building is existing on the site, and we advised the client to keep this building. They wanted to tear it away. And we said, like, no, please don't. We check it first. Is it still usable? Is it still renovatable? And this is also the role of the architect in the future, is we have so much built substance, we cannot afford to tear these buildings away and just make new buildings just because we don't like them. Because imagine, this is all stored energy, stored in a way emissions, stored carbon, right? If you would tear this away, you will generate rubble, you use energy to tear it away, and then you need new energy, which is called embedded energy, to make a new building. So you need to think creatively, you need to think out of the box. What can you do with this building to make it functional and useful for a new client, new task, or contemporary usage? And that's the result of it. So we work together with an interior architects. They're a friend of ours. They did the whole interior thing, and then we came up with this facade with the green. So when you go now there, it's even greener. Plants are growing first upwards, and then they grow downwards. So now the greener part is up here, and then slowly it goes downwards. But also this facade we did in a way, first of all, Jakarta is very, asphalt, concrete. We want to add something green. We want to also have people looking outside, seeing something green. This has to do with well-being. But at the same time, this facade, this envelope is shading the interior. So I'm teaching tropical envelope. I'm talking about this energy. And what it does is it reduces the heat from the sun on the inside, meaning you need much less energy for air conditioning. So this is something, the power of transformation, but also the responsibility we have as architects towards the society. Of course, architecture is a fantastic creative job, and I love designing, but don't underestimate the role you have for society. It's not only self-actualization. So that's a very important part of architecture, I find, and I like this a lot. But also supporting communities. So, like I said, we are operating in Indonesia mostly. And I think this is also something which might be important for you. Maybe not so much Indonesia per se, but Singapore is a very small country with a very limited market as well. So a lot of Singaporean companies look outside of Singapore what they can do. And a lot of people, especially in Indonesia, they look up to Singapore. What has been done in Singapore, what has been proven in Singapore is very valuable. So if you have this knowledge here, you can also go abroad or work abroad and bring this knowledge there and help, in a way, bringing society further. And this here is in Yogyakarta. It's a kampung redevelopment program, Merican. And you see, this is an existing pendopo. And we designed and built, or not built, but we designed this micro-library here. So we're doing a lot of micro-library projects, a lot of community projects. And it works in conjunction. So we visited a month ago, or 1.5 months ago, roughly, shortly before end of Ramadan, Eid al-Fitr. So, this is book bear, when they shortly before they're breaking their fast, you see the sun is already setting. And it's very interesting to see this power of transformation also for the society. You have an impact on the society. You can really improve the lives of people. And I think this is really a wonderful aspect of our work as an architect. But of course, also the creative process. I don't deny it. After years of smaller projects, we also have like a bigger one now. And this is a design, it's called Rubik, Rumah Budaya Indonesia Kaya in Jakarta. This is a multi-purpose theater hall. And we started to design this in 2019. It took us, and you know, for architecture, because you're looking like, you need a long breath. You know, it takes sometimes years, sometimes projects disappear in the drawer. So you need a long breath to go through with it. So right now it's under construction. The ground is flat. The underground parking is built. But, you know, you go in this process from 2019, and this is the VMU, the visual mock-up. So this is just a little building next to it, which will be torn down. The materials will be reused just to see, does this facade work out? What is the material selection? What is the construction method? And, you know, you see already this is like 4-story high. Then you realize this is maybe part of this, how big this building is. And of course, you know, this is like very fascinating that you have this in a computer, you have this in a drawing board, and all of a sudden this is going to be materialized, it's going to be real. The possibility of experimentation. So a lot of my colleagues have similar slides calling it knowledge. So you have this moment where you can experiment, you generate knowledge, you try things out, maybe in a smaller scale, and then you scale it up. And this is super fascinating. This is sort of this thirst for, you know, trying things and generating, you know, new input for you and the colleagues. So here, for instance, this is a facade from a microlibrary where we used roughly 1,800 reused ice cream buckets. So these are 5-liter ice cream buckets. This is something, you know, just folding textile around and sewing it together. It then became a facade for another microlibrary. So you're trying out this sort of big scale, small scale. You're always switching back and forth in these scales in architecture. And this is part of my PhD where I was doing something about daylighting. So this is a liquid lens. So you see this is a convex lens. I put water in. Water has a index of refraction, and it, you know, redirects like a lens you have, you know, redirects the light. So you can use this almost like a lens, but you can also focus light through it. And if you have it concave, it spreads the light, and if you have convex, it starts bundling the light. And with this device, you can redirect the light. You orient these mirrors towards the sun direction, and you redirect it. So there's a lot of possibilities and a lot of opportunities of this experimentation, and I think this is really the joyful part in architecture. And last but not least, and I think Federico showed this also in his slide, there's so many career paths in architecture. So I had this moment of crisis like 10 years ago, you know, do I want to stay being an architect, being at the end of my PhD, and it was like, So I sat down, all the skills I've learned, and I'm a great Star Wars fan. I like science fiction and all this sort of stuff. So I started model and design a spaceship. So it took me 6 months. I mean, I you know, modeled screws and the cockpit and the joystick and the user interface and stuff like this. So all in Rhino. And if you start learning Rhino and you know what it is and what it is about, like, you know, modeling this sort of surfaces where it comes from flat folding up and having the surface continuity, then you know this is like not an easy feat. So at a certain moment I thought like maybe become a 3D modeler for computer games. Didn't happen, I'm here. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for Florian. All right, we will welcome 4 presenters together with the program director for Q&A. So it's a free flow kind of thing. Any one of you can raise your hand up for any question that you may have, and I'll pass you the mic.
Hello.
Morning. All right. Yeah. Thanks for the presentation. I think it's we had the pleasure of seeing a quite wide variety of describing what architecture means, and this in fact is a sample. It's like 4 of them teaching with us at VOA. We have 40 plus academics and practitioners. So imagine the variety of approaches, framework, and attitudes towards like defining what architecture. I think that these prompts were given by me to them to have like a conversation on the basics of what makes an architect an architect. And I think, yeah, what you see from the presentation is this kind of very wide range of scale. So looking at the minuscule, the microscopic, the vein on or the texture of a piece of timber, to looking at how a building has an impact in an urban context. So, and I think, yeah, that transpires from in all of them in different ways. This kind of swinging between the microscopic and the macroscopic, or the attention towards performance, and as a performance that is always linked to materiality, and a materiality that is perhaps kind of encapsulated in the form of a reflection in the presentation of Jacqueline, or in the example provided by Adrian and Hui Lian. Yeah, I think it's also nice to see what made you thinking about architecture as an object. We have like your more, let's say, performance-driven approach with the folding trailer. Adrian, I was surprised to see your IKEA kind of entry point.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, you should show your.
Mine was a refraction lens from a street lamp that so it's like an engineering piece.
Yeah.
Was refracting light and the image of the environment upside down.
Wow.
So it was like turning off the light, and that suddenly there is this kind of refraction of and I was redrawing the environment. It's like a piece my father gave me. But anyway, no, perhaps like before, if there is any question, we can start from you.
You can ask us anything except our salary.
Or maybe I can start. No, I was wondering. You gave us a glimpse of what made you an architect. Maybe a question is, did that sort of image of yourself being an architect transform in this year? Did you end up doing architecture differently from what you imagined at the beginning of your career? Is the practice transforming maybe? Like also perhaps like you can choose in whatever way you want to address this. Perhaps the practice of architecture today, what it is to be an architect, maybe more for the three of you, more in the Singapore context. Although you have shown example also of architecture done abroad, and in your case also maybe from the perspective of a foreigner in Asia, kind of having to relate to the social cultural fabric and having to propose new building form. Any of you want to pick up on this?
Has it changed?
I mean, I graduated first 2003 and then again 2006, and this is now almost 20 years I'm out of university, right? And you have personal developments. So what you start with, what you're fascinated very much in the beginning with architecture, maybe there is some works of some architects, and then your first job you pick, but you develop further. So I think like any journey, all these experiences, be it here, be it in your own country, whatever, and also the opportunities, they shape you, right? So what you found more important 20 years ago is not so important maybe right now, so it changes, right? I mean, I was working for you in studio for a while in Amsterdam. This is the office we did the SUTD campus, and a couple of buildings here, which is sort of very shapy, form-driven. So that's where I learned my Rhino skills, right? And now if you look at my projects, now I'm back to the box, trying to make nice boxes, and sort of, you learn, for instance, in Indonesia, you cannot do everything or anything. So it has to be producible, but you need to understand what can the people do and then react towards this. So, and you change, you grow with your projects.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's definitely a rite of passage to be in this field. The type of people that you meet, the offices that you work with and for, For me, similar to Florian, I think we're all been out of school for quite a number of years. So if you ask me at the start of architecture school what kind of an architect I wanted to be, I don't think I would be able to give you an answer, because at the end of the day, we are still starting out, and we are all like sponges, you know, like, I mean, all of you are places which you can build upon yourself as you grow up and you mature and you look at places differently. The things that you read when you were a student, I mean, I'm rereading some of the texts that I was given as required text to read when you were a student. But at every point in your career as an architect, you read them and you have very different reactions to them, because when you read them when you were a student, you felt a certain way about them. But then now, when you read them after many years of practice, you think very differently about them, because these were written by practicing architects as well at that time when they were practicing, and it's very real. It used to be, I used to tell my students, don't use different ways of thinking to think about architecture, because at the end of the day, you are yourself, and a lot of times students would need to use like, oh, I need to use my theoretical brain now to think about this, and I need to use my, I don't know, like intuitive brain to think about this. But actually, architecture is a melding of many different parts of you, right? The scientific part, the intuitive part, the more artistic, creative part. And I think when Federico was putting on together those slides, it really shows the type of thinking that you do is a lot about your own personal take on things. And there's never like a right way or a wrong way of doing it. And I think this is one of the courses where you really get to develop your own voice and your own way in which you want to shape who you are in the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, actually, we are here to tell you a bit about ourselves so that we can help you, understand what architects do. So actually, really, we want you to talk to us. We already know each other. We bought ourselves silly already. So, I mean, like,
Yes.
one question, great.
Hello. Okay. Let me stand up. Okay. Hi. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. My question is open to all. It's pertaining to the idea of you, or as architects, being attached to your projects. So I wanted to ask, as an architect, do you find yourself attached to your projects? And what are your views on such attachments? Thank you.
I think it's great, isn't it? We have. I think every problem, when we start to have ownership of the problem, ownership is something we really try to get every student to help understand. As soon as you come into school, adulting is really hard. Nobody wants to do it. We're also still fighting adulting. Yeah, still fighting, yes. But you realize, and if any students ask me what's the one thing I need, I just say ownership. Just own the thing you're talking about, because I'm not here to teach you my knowledge. I need to know what you're interested in. And a lot of us growing up in Singapore, we just supposed to just score very well and just get into the best course possible. Don't think so much, right? Like, don't make so early decisions, because what if you close some doors? You know, that kind of parent speaking to us. Some wisdom in it, some. But then when you come to Archi School, you can see that actually we're learning to design things, how to assemble things, how to create things that are beautiful, that are useful. But really, it's a kind of impact you want to make. You can see from the just a small sample, right? The range of the joys we find are overlapping but quite different. So really, in Archi School, you really have to find what drives you. What's your purpose, right? What you do architecture for? Do you want impact on community? Do you want impact on old people not having to work so hard, or they don't have to move because, so for example, political GE just finished. For example, we have en bloc, and then we always say selective en bloc is okay, ma. We give them some money and then they go somewhere else. But communities that are brought together, built up over 20 years, once they remove that exact configuration, our neighbors lost. It's really lost. So, I mean, that can be something that drives you. how is architecture going to solve that? It is exactly architecture, right? Right? It's building of homes, right? So I think we have ownership of our buildings, large and small. And you will find that you have so much ownership that when you walk your house clients around, you still say, my this space, I want, and then they will say, hey, it's my space, right? Like they paid for it. So we when you're younger, you kind of forget to tell them that it's their space. But ownership is good, I think, yeah.
Maybe I'll just touch on attachment. I feel especially in the beginning of when I first started working, the attachment is real. Like you spend all your hard work in the project, and at least if it is a small scale as a house, it minimally takes 2 years. And imagine 2 years of your time and energy is poured to the house. The project naturally becomes very personal, and sometimes too personal such that when clients critique something, it becomes a personal attack. That was me, I think, in the beginning years of my practice. I've practiced about 13 years now. And at this point in my career, I feel like my attachment is more to the process rather than the product itself. And I don't necessarily hold very tangible I'm not attached to the tangible things rather than the intangible feeling of the space. For example, like what Federico had shared, the designing of empty spaces, to me, I'm more kind of attached to the spatial quality, and that's very personal to me, and honestly, clients will not get it, so it's okay. They don't know what I enjoy or what is my take in the project, but to me, I get that in each at least I try to, and to me, I'm more attached to that part of the project. So to me, if I hand over the project, it's okay. They get enjoyed, but to me, I feel, okay, I've done this, I've tested it, and to me, that's the more important part of my attachment to the project itself. Yeah.
I very much agree. And I think this is something students and also myself continuously need to remind myself and to learn is, on one hand, you need to get attached to the project, because otherwise you're not giving 100%. You need to become really excited. But the problem is you're not operating in a vacuum. You're always working in a team. You work with a client, you work with a budget, and you work with constraints, right? And not everybody might agree. You know, when you study here, maybe your tutor might not agree with your design decision. You need to be flexible, right? But taking this critique is sometimes really hard, and this is a struggle, and this is what you need to learn to manage. Especially in university, nobody wants you anything bad, you know, it's just like, you know, they want to help you, right? But, you know, this attachment is important, but also it is important to learn to let go, you know, and let it go and run its own course, because sometimes it's not in your hands, you know. I mean, you cannot imagine how often I got so angry on a building site because, you know, some people were like doing something with this detail, and I was like, why? You know, and, you know, so you need to really, you know, I mean, this is still for me, still didn't master it.
Yes. No, we have another question. I totally agree. I think it's an art to sort of understand architectural ownership. At the beginning, you feel very, 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 very connected to the type of work that you put forward. So I imagine that would be the case when you design in the studio. You feel that the idea is your idea, and it's like that sort of straightforward connection between your concept and what you propose in the building, because the constraints are not that hard on you. I mean, of course, there is a brief that constrains you. Of course, there is a program that it defines you. But when you go out in the real world, then the series of constraints are quite more complex than in the studio. And as they have outlined, sort of, there is a long process of negotiation with the contractor, with the client, with yourself, with your practice. And that sort of continuous evolution of the project is something that you need to relate to. You will never have full control of that project. So authorship, yes, but it's a negotiated authorship and ownership. So in a way, when the project is finished, I always look at it as it has a life on its own. It's not attached to me. I mean, it's attached in a way. There is a connection, but I need to let go in a way. But yeah, we got another question on WhatsApp.
One small thing, very small. Now, this is also like when you start visiting architecture or looking at buildings, right? It's very easy to be very critical, but you know, a lot of times you don't know how these decisions and how this result came into place because there are so many people involved, and it's not just like the architect. So, you know, you have an important role, you're orchestrating things, but you're not the only one, right? So build up good teamwork right in the beginning, you know, and good relationships with, and respectful relationships with all the engineers and whatever involved, because otherwise you will run against the wall.
So yeah, one question from WhatsApp, we just given from Alicia. So the question is, I hear that the design studio is very intense. How should I prepare myself for that? That's always the burning question.
That's a very good question.
But I'm prepared for that since I've given this answer several times. So, architecture can be intense. Why? Simply because it's a type of knowledge that spans across a very creative endeavor and a very technical one. So there are two parts of the project that need to kind of come together. And because of that, when you have a deadline and you need to submit a design proposal, the technical part can be easily satisfied and dealt with. So you just need to say you can do the calculation, and the calculation are black and white, right or wrong, either structural or environmental. You can just kind of allow yourself no freedom. You just need to kind of set a target and you can deliver. The part that makes you kind of overwork the proposal over and over, which can lead to very intense design studio session in-house and in your house, is the creative part. The creative part that is like open-ended, meaning a project can be revised and redone over and over and over. So that can lead itself to being the cause for sleepless night, for overworking yourself. So it's very important, and it's not something that one acquires at the beginning of an academic career, because at the beginning you feel, I need to overwork this. It's not finished. Yes, a project is never finished creatively. It can go on forever. So it's up to you to define a deadline in which you decide necessarily this is the project as it is, and it should, as it will be delivered this time. You need to kind of set that subjective deadline. Say like, that's it, it's done. Otherwise, it can go on forever, the creative process. And then, at the beginning, every one of us probably did it. The first semesters in academia, you keep working on and reworking on the project, and then you end up without time. So my advice in relation to that is set yourself clear deadline for when to stop designing and producing for the material for the presentation or the submission. Set that deadline ahead of time, not at the presentation time. And that will save a lot of kind of hard working night from you.
I think it's intense because, we do not deny that it's going to be intense. I think there will be moments of intensity, but that comes with the territory of every sort of activity that you do that needs you to get into this state of flow. All of you would probably know, like, if you are in a state of flow, it's actually very enjoyable, right? But in order to get to that state, you have to have that intensity of doing something over and over again to be able to enjoy then the sort of fruits of the labor of that many hours that you would be spending on it.
In Denmark, it's Scandinavia, a lot of water, Vikings. They have a saying, they say, don't teach your young how to sail. Teach them the love of the sea. Because they will learn it themselves. When they yearn for the sea, teach your children to yearn for the sea. And they will learn the skills themselves. So I think your curiosity about your own love for design and how you want to help people through buildings, why does buildings matter, that should be, so when your parents say, you're going to start school already, let's go travel, really, just go and explore different cities. But having said that, some skills will always help us feel a bit better, right? How to prepare. So you should sign up for the masterclass next Saturday. 25 spots left. I think really, if you come to that masterclass, you see what we mean by Archi School cannot be read in a book. It's like saying you can learn piano if you just read some books. Cannot, right? So architecture is a bit like learning a language. You can read the theory, you can learn to read notes, but you still have to practice making things and applying concepts. So this practicing, at first very painful, but if you have no fear, you just have some skills of making, just producing things and be able to talk about it and discuss ideas, that process really helps all the other skills you can learn, whether computer or whatever else. So that kind of process to get you started, really sign up for the masterclass. It's really organized so that you will know how to prepare in the next few months. Okay?
Very shortly, I think what Federico was saying is essential. In a creative process, you sometimes cannot steer this, right? But what you can steer is setting yourself a framework. You have a deadline. This is the finishing deadline. You have a time to upload. You need time for layout. You need time for the graphics. You take this deadline. You calculate back, and you set yourself your own milestones when you think you have to finish with what, and then you take the decision, okay, now maybe I can shift this a day or two, right? But, getting roughly an idea how long you need for certain things is super important to manage your time management. Otherwise, you will always run and will be too late, and you have these overnighters. So creativity and this production needs to be managed. And the faster you learn this, the better you will be able to produce within that.
I think it was also important to say that we have a very nice campus, we have very nice studios, so please use the spaces here, because that kind of peer support that you have in your own year is also very important to keep yourself motivated to come to school. Yeah, so it is. He's going on his bike. So yes, it is important to keep that kind of social aspect of school alive, especially because school here for architecture is a very long drawn, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So you need your friends around you all the time.
On that, I think studio is a place where you should all show up, and also the network of friends. They are your support system. Even now, after practicing for 14 years, my friends from studio are my support system, because no one else can truly understand what we go through. So I urge you guys to really stay in studio. There's a community that is helpful to be in, and don't work alone. Yeah, don't go when studio is on Monday, you just show up on Monday and you go home, because it can be a very lonely journey, and nothing beats peer learning. You see your friends, maybe you are scared by what they produce, you feel like, oh my God, they are doing a lot better. But I guess this kind of fear drives you to also want to better yourself. So I feel just being in studio is a first step in surviving architecture school. And also when you're in school, you see your seniors work. That's how you learn as well. No one's going to have a curriculum per se to teach you all the skills, but for example, if you look at how the seniors make wonderful models, you can approach them, learn from them. So to me, that was how I kind of survived. I look at seniors. Of course, they sometimes ask me to help. Back then, there was this culture of younger years helping the seniors make their models, because the seniors' submissions are later. So you finish your submission, you help the seniors as well. So the kind of learning from seniors I feel do help in also brushing up your skills and knowing how to navigate school and beyond that.
And then they help you get a job next time, because they're senior. It's a good ecosystem. You got a question there? Yeah.
we have. Do you have any question? You have one here, one there. Okay.
Hi. Once again, thank you guys for the speech and the sharing. I have one question. Maybe I'll start off with a little bit of context. For me, I've graduated from Polytechnic. So at the start of my education in architecture, to be honest, I was very confused. I was very lost. But I'm glad to say that I've graduated with passion and focus in what I want to do. After that, I've entered national service, so that kind of took me out of the education and look at it at a clearer lens. I have a question is, to me, it feels like architecture design or design in general is a service line. And studying architecture or seeing individuals slowly progress towards providing and contributing to the service, that is part of the supply. And my question is on the demand. Do we have a say in the other side of the coin, or how do we contribute to this supply-demand relationship in architecture practices? Yeah, thank you.
SIA.
You can join SIA. Adrian is recruiting. Yeah, I think that's a very good question, actually, and it's something that is very, very real. After you graduate from architecture school, you have to join a practice, and the practice has to have work in order to sustain you through your career, right? In order to grow. But I think what is important also is to ask yourself what kind of an architect you aspire to be. What kind of a project do you want to do? And at the end of the day, I think we all gravitate towards projects which we feel we will have the most impact on. And with that, I think there's always demand for the type of projects the type of work that you bring to the table. So because we are not all the same, I mean, every single architecture firm is differentiated from each other because of the type of projects that we choose to do. So in a way, demand is not so clear as a whole. I mean, you can see the economy going up and down, but there's always demand, for example, for essentials, right? Like the MRT stations will need to get built, the bus stops will need to get built. Things that are always needed, like our hospitals, our schools, there are always essential demands for those items of architecture. And in a way, architecture to me is very ubiquitous. It's like a covered walkway can be seen as a form of architecture. A school is also seen as a form of architecture. A lot of things, they don't need, and I think that's also partly why I became an architect. You don't need to have $1 million to want to be given a good space to be in, right? So I think at the end of the day, it's how you see yourself as the architect and what kind of work do you want to do.
That was the same question my mom asked me when I wanted to go sign up Archi school. She said, Singapore so small, still can build meh? Next time got a job meh? And you're asking a question way beyond your years lah. Because when she asked me, I don't care. I just want to do this, right? But it's not true also, because if you listen to Ong Ye Kung and 4G ministers and 3G ministers, they also said it was very easy to house a nation. It was easy to build the infrastructure, right? He said easy, but Lee Kuan Yew and all the previous leaders worked very hard to bring us here, right? To bring the infrastructure to world's busiest port, etc., etc. You know Singapore's accolades, right? But that to him, in the next lap, the ministers are already saying this is just the infrastructure. Now we need the next level, which is what? How many hospitals were there when we were growing up? 3 hospitals maybe. Now how many are there? Right? We are going towards a developed nation, and developed nations have different priorities, right? And of course, we are a young nation, SG 60. When it's SG 120, we must have cultural legacies. So when you go to Tokyo, you go to Kyoto, you go to wherever you go to, their museums were built hundreds of years ago. That's our next lap, right? There's so many things we need to do as architects. So our architectural landscape, you have infrastructure, you have public housing, you have necessities. But the next ambition is already beckoning to us already, right? If you go back maybe 3-4 years back, you look at the 8 trusts that the ministries want to do, our government, the 8 things they want to do, social compact, lifelong learning, etc. You look through each one of them. Which one doesn't have some building and interior and spatial design involved in there, right? So even our airport, we need to remain number 1 in global traffic for our airport, right? They're building T5 now. My wife is working on it for the last 4 years and another 12 years. She thinks also very tired already. So it's like we're planning ahead and the demand is always there. But I think also the second part of the question is, if there's so many of us, then the supply is so big, then demand, then our salary not so good or whatever else. But there is this issue. We are in a kind of dynamic state where maybe the easy buildings, everyone's just charging too little to do those very easy buildings. Maybe part of your passion is to think about what are the not so easy buildings that are frontier buildings that government will have to pay you top dollar to design, or clients have to pay you more money to design. So one of the things to learn is creating your own niche as an architect, right? Creating your own market, creating some strengths. And if, of course, the strengths are also what the market needs, then very good, right? You know the Japanese ikigai, right? 4. You answer that question yourself, lah. But there'll always be demand, right?
Back to demand. I think I will share maybe this analogy. Everyone, not everyone will eat chicken, but fried chicken. If there's a want to eat fried chicken, there's many ways of cooking, right? There's some that you just buy a frozen one, and you can be in a way the designer of the frozen chicken, but you can also be the kind where you will bury the chicken in mud and have it for half a year. So I think just one single ingredient, let's say a type of building, there are so many ways to approach it. And the demand is then the kind of clients that will, or rather the person, different preference for the types of chicken will come to you based on the way you cook it. So in a way, the demand is there, but it's about differentiating the types of or the ways you design and to cook the chicken. So to put it that way, so you can just as fried chicken, you can go to even the ha cheong gai. That's one type. There's the izakaya type. So they're really even just purely fried chicken. There are already so many types. So you can imagine a building type can be approached in many ways. So it's really about seeing eventually what kind of architect you want to be, and there's definitely demand for all sorts of buildings as well as taste.
Just to add on to this, it's not maybe only differentiating in terms of within what is generally conceived as a built architecture. But for example, I worked for architecture firms before I opened my own architecture firm that does now educational complexes, so built architecture. At the same time, in Singapore, I run a research lab that does digital architecture, meaning we work with cultural institutions such as Singapore Art Museum, National Gallery to build digital spaces, digital twins or spaces that allow the physical world to be interfaces with the digital infrastructure. Because also in the digital space, architects are kind of sort of necessary to define culturally how we live in that realms, for example. So even not within the realm of what is considered architecture, you can specialize and differentiate yourself if you wish to. Let's say, I haven't left architectural discipline, but I try to tap, for example, in ways so that can foresee different sort of transformation or market trends that you need to be able to kind of research, study, and foresee, so that you are ahead of the curve, and then you can sort of propose innovative ways of thinking, not only digital services, but new performance structure, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. Another very important part in being an architect in Singapore is part of what Adrian was saying before, which is Singapore necessarily, because of its territory, is rethinking or trying to implement a new form of production. So in order to grow exponentially in the next 10, 20, 30 years, its internal production, so to satisfy the local demands. So that by itself is not only tackled by engineer, but it's also tackled by urbanists and architects, because there will be the necessary spaces needed for a whole system of new logistic, new form of production, new form of aquaculture, new form of agriculture, intensive or extensive. And so in that realm, there is a whole world, a universe to explore at the territorial scale. But I think, yeah, you can look at the different scale in different ways, or in different sort of in different ways, so that you can innovate and sort of allow the community, whatever that community is, to expand, increment, augment, and so on and so forth. I think we had another question here, or am I correct? No. Oh, sorry, I misread you. So I think we had where? There. Okay.
Okay, I have one more question. It's pertaining to getting inspiration, because I know inspiration can be found anywhere, but what exactly should I ask myself and focus to explore the inspiration? Because I find myself that when I go out, I see all these beautiful things and I'm like, wow, this is really nice, but that's it. I want to try to transcend and explore this idea. So that's why I am looking to you guys to help me answer this question and try to figure out the answer together. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah, that's a very good question. I think inspiration is a little bit. It's a very general sort of feeling, right? Like, I think, as you rightly put it, you walk around, you see all these nice buildings, you get inspired. But I think what we are talking about is then how do you give specificity to this very general idea of inspiration? So in order to give some sort of specificity, I think you then need to know why do you need this inspiration? Like, what was the motive behind wanting to get inspiration? So I think for me, at least I feel for my students as well, the way I try to make them be a little bit more concrete about how they get inspired by the things that they see and do is to create tactile and physical objects of memory. So they go to a space and they are inspired by it. Then they make like a scale model of it, and they understand then why it's so important to them. Why is that space inspiring for them? Or you can do photographic montages of why you feel that space is interesting to you. So I think there's a lot of like this input and output, right? If you just everything input and there's nothing output, you tend to not remember it very well, and you also don't like make your own stance towards it. So it definitely needs to have an input as well as an output. So I think for your generation especially, and I have a daughter who is about the same age as you guys, so a lot of times, I mean, I get it, right? It's entertainment. You watch a lot of things on the devices, and you watch a lot of things, and a lot of input. There's a lot of input, right? But if you don't input and then process it and then output, it just remains as input. And I think then the questioning of why am I doing all this input is very important and critical. So that's where you will be hopefully led by your tutors through the years to really be more critical towards the things that you are producing, because you then have a very strategic way of wanting to do that production so that you gain most out of it. I think, to me, that's
I agree wholeheartedly. Picasso, you know Picasso? Yeah, okay. Picasso said, inspiration does exist, but it has to find you working, right? And I think it's profound in so many ways. And I agree with Jack that the key thing in Aki school is translation. What do I mean by translation? Translation means here from one realm or one medium to another medium. So if you see a space and you like it, how do you translate that into something that is memorable, or you can archive, or you can share with someone? well, the internet and social media platform have made it very easy for you to do stories and TikTok and all that. But translating visual to visual is too easy. It doesn't help you translate into, because you think about it, as an architect, I want to help people. And I want to make, let's say, spaces that help communities connect. But I cannot stand there as an architect and say, hey, you, talk to you, connect. I cannot, right? I cannot give the instruction. So from my early intention to want people to sit together, maybe care a bit about each other, maybe their daily rituals and their routines will make them pass each other quite a lot, so they will start to take notice of each other. Things like that are very abstract at first, and it has to go through so many layers. I have to decide how big the window is, how high the gate is, so that people, when they walk past, 1.8 meters is the landed house height. 1.8 is exactly when you can't see someone and they can't see you. So it's a very exclusive or excluding kind of thing, right? So if you just say, let's make it 0.9. So when people walk past, it's a bit like, oh, hello, I can see you, right? So translating from one thing, whether it's poetry or it's a music that you want to design a space out of music, or some brand, Samsung comes to you and say, I want to have this new product, it's going to make home life easy. It's all very abstract things. How do you translate that into a space, right? Is it curve forms, then very, very futuristic, or what is it? So all these are translation from one language to another language, right? Words into colors, words into what shape is the table, or how your entrance is. So no matter what, it's always going to be from one realm to another is translation. So when you find inspiration, it has to find you working hard to try and translate it to another medium. Make a design journal, make a monograph of your travels, right? And say, I'll print it in a small little book, or I'll put it in a folder, I'll put this music so that the music chimes in with this part, and then later on it becomes different. All these are all making, right? You're translating that feeling, that inspiration that you found, those feelings into something that someone can evoke, right? You must evoke that same thing in the next person who sees it, right? That's what design does, right? It takes your feeling and you design something so someone feels that same thing, right?
I don't think inspiration is something like you sit down and then suddenly it clicks in you. To me, at least through the years, it isn't about doing nothing and then be inspired suddenly. But like what Adrian mentioned, it will find you when you are working on it. So on that note, you got to be obsessed about something. For example, it can be as mundane as, let's say, I'm obsessed about rain, right? Then you research. So the more you research, you'll be like, oh, how do you keep rain in? Or is there a way? So I think the more you research, the more you are able to get cues that can then be translated to something that you can innovate. I don't think we are at that level that we can create something new. It's always built upon something that exists, and then how do you translate it that is relevant to whatever you're working on. So in order to be able to kickstart something, you got to start doing something and research more. The more you research, I'm sure you will kind of be geared towards something that you are really interested in. Yeah. So for example, even just about light, how do you translate? How do you control light? So that comes in itself so many things that you can explore. It can go down to be quite scientific and at the same time quite poetic as well. So it's about how do you translate something that is really very scientific into something poetic, that may be something that is your take on the subject matter. So I guess on inspiration, that is how I take on any project as well, right? There's sometimes clients just come to you with just a house brief, but then what is it? What's your take on something that you can build upon? So yeah, I guess.
Thank you. Sorry, can I just add? I know you all want to go already. Just an advice for students. All through school, primary school to poly, JC, the mode of learning, I think, is changing, but it's still very consumer-based. You sit in class, don't talk, then listen, right? So you have to consume the info, and it's always the right answer is already there, right? You find the correct 10-year series is there. And when they say when you go to university it's different, you have to create your own knowledge, you have to create your own pathway. It's especially true in Archi, right? Like I said, you cannot learn how to play the piano by reading a book about playing the piano, right? You have to practice it. And so in Archi, this translation, this working, this inspiration is embedded in you constantly producing things. So you have to really get into this mode of whether you are making 4 models or 17 models in the digital space, not so much money, right? Just making, or just making little paper models, etc. You just have to keep creating these things, okay? So just remember this, when you come to Archi school, you're gonna create your own knowledge and literally you're gonna make a lot of things. Just keep making, unafraid of judgment and being judged, right? Because they're judging the work with you. They're not judging you, they're judging the work with you. Because you don't know how to judge work yet. So like your brilliant questions embedded so many things. Like how do you even translate, how do you understand what to look out for? Archi school is about opening your eyes to understand how to look out for these design codes, right? All these ambitions and all the things that are around us, right? So when you do something, we have to decode it with you. It sounds like criticism of you, but it's not. We are like just telling you, when you design something, you have to consider this, 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 right? It sounds like a knock on your, right? Like, oh, how come you didn't consider the 17 other things? But that's what you came to school for, right? Okay, so remember this, when the chips are down and the times are tough, hang around studio, misery loves company. You're not gonna just survive, like you're gonna thrive. But it's making, just constantly making, okay? And when a tutor sees that you're constantly making, even though you can't explain it and you don't really understand, they will put an arm around you and say, I'm with you, right? Right? So don't get stuck, don't sit around saying, I don't know how to explain, I didn't like that you made comment last week, so this week I won't do anything because I can't explain it. I don't want to get criticized again. Remember, it's not criticism of you, okay? We are trying to criticize the work so you learn. Remember this, okay? Nobody needs to knock you. Okay.
Thanks for the question. I think it was is a deeply philosophical question. Yeah. That because inspiration in a way can be anywhere, and maybe is too much around. Given that now you can access information way more easily than where was it 20 years ago. So in a way, it gets very, very difficult to choose what is a good inspiration versus a bad inspiration, because new trends and new vibes and new atmosphere and new color and new schemes pop up in the day-to-day. So I think that's like a deep question to ask yourself. There is something that maybe, let's put it this way, resonates deeper, at a deeper level, versus other things that can be cool, can be interesting, but not that, they don't kind of generate that connection. I think that's why I like to discriminate what makes you resonate at a different sort of frequency, and it makes you feel something. It's perhaps to test it out, to pick it up, to pick up that call that you have with that something, that particular form of architecture, or that form of music, or that form of doing, or that form of playing, and try it in practice. Otherwise, it's sort of an endless and restless collection of references. But that's not what makes inspiration transforming into a transformative practice. But anyway, I'm teaching a class on contemporary theories on the 4th year, so it's not going to be 1st year, but you will have time to discuss that. Sorry, we have another question. I believe we have time for one last question.
Now that artificial intelligence is like more prominent in the society, people start to say like, oh, be careful, like AI might take over your job. So do you think being an architect is one of the jobs that like is being threatened by AI? Or how do you think like the job of an architect will change now that AI is present?
You want to start or should I start? So it's definitely some parts of being an architect are changing. So what AI at the moment can do is automating certain part of the job. So if you ask to kind of find the most perfect arrangement of functional requirement, given that it has learned those functional requirements, it will be able to provide some solution. But architecture, I think we put it in different ways before. It's not just quantification. It's not just. So if you want an AI to study like endless variation of a facade system and how all these elements are tilted at different angles at different times of the day, of course it will give you an answer to which one is the most optimal solution for those elements to be oriented towards. But it will not give you an answer pertaining the cultural relevance of a project inserted in an urban context. That's something that needs to be negotiated between the maker or the proposer of that object and a community and the different agencies that are involved in the decision-making process. And I think at the moment, I mean, simply put, does an AI intelligence manages to generate a rendering, given a prompt, manage to generate, let's say, an averagely written essay, maybe manages, but it doesn't manage to make leap of creativity, so to connect different register of knowing. And also to give you a much more practical example, maybe it manages to synthesize, if you ask it, what is the most perfect floor plan of a building after you have given it 100,000 of floor plan of office spaces. It will give you like some sort of spatial arrangement, yeah? But it will not be able to give you a diagram of a building, meaning a diagram is something that sort of is a system of traces that connect performance of a building, plus functionality, plus lighting condition, plus phenomenological perception. An AI model at the moment, I mean, maybe it sounds abstract because diagram, you don't know yet what a diagram is and what it does, but the diagram as a drawing is not able to, and diagramming is in fact like one of the very sort of activities of architect, because in a diagram is a synthetic representation of many different sort of elements. And it boils down to that. Then, does it take away jobs? I mean, any new technology transforms the way we do things. It's not taking away job, but it's transforming the job. So in a way, it is maybe helpful on many different aspects. So it's just like it requires a certain kind of attitude or openness, not to reject technology heads on, but to sort of accept it, test it out, and try out how it could potentially transform the practice from within.
So it's quite interesting because we actually tried out AI in our practice to see whether or not it could replace, like you said, the role of the intern, right? So in a architectural practice, we always have a bunch of interns that would be coming in to do more of like the so-called collation of information, representation of it to the client, and things like that. That are less complex processes that needs to be done. So we thought, okay, let's try with the AI. But the feedback was it will take 3 or 4 interns to do what the AI didn't even manage to do. So it's really very difficult to have a sort of one-to-one almost replacement of the capabilities, because you still need to give it an instruction. You still need to be clear enough of instruction to the AI for it to generate the things that you want it to generate. And half the time, the things that you generate is not even usable because there's no context. There's no ability that they can see that this is exactly what you require. Whereas a more humanistic approach would be to take you through the entire process, and that person will be able to then do the next step. But an AI doesn't think like that. I mean, for now, it doesn't think like that, right? It takes a sample of what it could be, and it tries to imagine what you're trying to ask it to do. So it's very, I think, at this point, it's very difficult, I think, to do things which we conventionally need to do in an architectural practice. So not yet lah.
I mean, it's very easy to generate a rendering.
Yes.
Quite much faster than having to model that building in a 3D software.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies are using it for that, to concepting stuff fast. Yet you need to be quite skilled in kind of formulating through language and through prompt engineering. So that's not to be taken for granted. It's a type of skill that requires architectural knowledge to prompt correctly an AI model to give you certain rendering. Otherwise, it gives you absurdities that have no cultural relevance whatsoever. So in a way, it's still primary the role of the person prompting, even when you do that such kind of quick testing with AI at the concepting phase, which is what most companies are using AI for at the moment.
But I think it's quite interesting. I mean, it's something that we, as the university, has many people coming in to talk about this topic. So if you come here to study, please come for the other lectures that are not just about your coursework, because this is actually very current. The topics that we always have the lunchtime talks and Thursday evening talks about, they are all very, very interesting current topics. That
we have also one module targeting directly that AI and prompt engineering, so that you will get the possibility of understanding the basics of it and sort of develop a critique or an acceptance in some form. But yeah, we are kind of constantly looking at new technology and how to integrate it critically within our curriculum. I believe we have gone way beyond the 3:45 time mark. So I will probably, we have another question, but we had said, no, because I see you with the phone, I said, okay,
Okay, I just wanted to know where the masterclass is.
Oh,
sign up for it.
Yes.
Okay, thanks anyway for your time and having endured this long conversation. And looking forward to meet you.